the Alteryx weekly challenge this week is all about joining, cleaning, and summarizing data. So it's inventory data of a beverage company. You can see the little bears dancing here, they're cute. So let's get straight into the challenge. So we've got 3 input files here. We've got some inventory data, invoicing data, and ordering data. So there's a little bit of cleaning that we need to do to each of them before we then join them together and finally summarize them at the end. I'll only go through bits and pieces of the solution that are interesting, so as not to bore you too much. So in this first inventory data, we've just got our product and our product ID, and then we can see that we've got location IDs in the headers, and we kind of immediately think to ourselves, we kind of want this location ID to be a separate field, so we're going to want to reshape our data so that these columns are instead rows. So to do that, we use the transpose tool, and we know very easily that it's transpose and not crosstab because the little image here is turning headers into rows instead of the other way around in the crosstab tool. So we're just going to make sure that we transpose that data to reshape it, and then just to get out, we only care about the 010 or the 020 numbers, for example. So we're just going to use a cheeky bit of regex to pass that information out, and we're just getting those 3 digits. So that's basically all the cleaning we need to do to the inventory data. To make the invoicing data a little bit cleaner, we can immediately see when we're looking at our data down here in the results window that we've got some red in that column. So if we hover over those values, then we can see that the cell has trailing spaces. So we've got 2 options to clean that up. We can either use a data cleansing tool, which I've chosen to do here. We're just selecting the location field and saying remove the leading and trailing white space. Great. You could also use a trim function within a formula tool, but it doesn't matter either way. So the other little bit of cleaning that we're going to do is on the order data. So if we look here, then we've got an estimated time of arrival in month, day, and year. And that's not very useful to have it as 3 separate columns. We want to make just one column for an estimated date, basically. So the way that we're going to do that is we're going to use a toDate function. And I couldn't really remember how to make this, how to write this basically, because I'm more used to using make date in Tableau. So to work out what I needed to do, I went and found it in here and just hovered over it to get the information about it. It says it can convert a string, date time, or a number into a date. So great, I thought I'll make these 3 columns into a string and then it'll convert that into a date for me. So the way that Alteryx generally has dates is year, month, and day. So first of all, I need to have the year. At the moment, we know that the year column here is a double, so we know that's a number basically. So we need to have that as a string, so we have that as year. And then we're adding on a dash and a 0 because we've only got June and July here. So we know that we need those to be 06 or 07. And then to read this from the inside out, we're using the datetimeparse to translate this month into a number, basically. So we're doing the month, and this little formula here, there's a handy little website that I'll link in the above description, and we can see that this specifier will give us for the full month name, so we've got June, July. If we use that, then that will return basically the 7 or the 6 associated with the month. So that's really useful and a lot quicker than sort of doing it manually. So that will return a full date as it stands. So we need to just take the month part of that date and turn that into a string. And then finally, we're just doing the same, adding on the date. And that gives us a nice 1 column for our date. So now comes the joining part of this challenge. So we're just going to need to make sure that we specify on product ID and location ID. If we look to see if anything's falling out, nothing's falling out the right, great. But we have got a couple of products that are falling out the left. Now we know that this will be on the product ID rather than the location ID. So if we just union those back together, then we'll notice that in our location column, we've got a couple of nulls, which that's not fair because we know that each location has got location ID has got a location associated with it. So we just want to sort that out. So we're going to use a little bit of multi-row formula. First, sorting by the location ID. If we go down, I think it was 060, and we'll just try and find those nulls. Then we just want to use a multi-row formula to say that if we find those nulls, then just take the value above as the location. And that's all that formula is doing, and we can see that fills it in nicely. So then we've got those two data sets joined together. Let's now join in the purchase orders. Again, we're joining on product ID and location ID, and we're just deselecting all of the fields that we don't need here. So we can see that the right side, nothing's falling out again, great, but the left side, we've got some things falling out. So once we union them back together, we're just going to do a little bit more cleaning to just say if it's null on the order quantity, then we want that to be a 0. And if the date's null, then we're going to say no PO. And that's why back over here, we didn't turn this formula into a date, because we knew that we were going to leave it as a string, basically. So possibly that to date was actually not worthwhile, because if we remove that, then we can see actually in the data preview that would give us our sort of desired date output anyway. But oh well, that's the way I first chose to do it. So the only step left now is to summarize that, aggregate it all up. So I did this a lot just looking at the data output. I know that's probably not the best way to do it, but in the output, I was saying, oh, look, so we need location ID, product quantity in stock. We'll need to group by all of them, oh, and location as well. Then we've got some sums, some averages coming in. It looks like we're going to have to add this up, and from the description here, we need the earliest purchase order, so that'll probably be a minimum. So that's the way I worked out what sort of thing I was going to need to include in my summarize tool. And that's exactly what I've done here. So that was a fairly quick solution for you today. So hope you enjoyed it.